My name is Mike Manganello, and we have a great program for everybody today. Today we're really going to dive deep into the current state of frauds and scams that we're all dealing with today, but more importantly, we're going to show you how to avoid them. Javier might scare you, but he'll give you some good tips. I'll warn you on that one. Before we begin, I want to give a special shout out to our sponsors, Dogwood Bank and the Scarlet Group. Without them, this would not be possible, so thank you. All right, let me introduce our keynote speaker. He is a good friend, a 4-time Emmy Award-winning Emmy Award winner, true crime podcaster of the series Pretend, the PONZI Playbook, and Criminal Conduct, Javier Leiva. Javier, come up here.
Wow, thanks, man. Hi, everyone. All right, so how many of you recognize the woman on the screen? That's Olivia Newton-John, but I bet you have no idea who the man who's in the picture with her, right? That is Patrick McDermott, who was her longtime boyfriend and partner. Now, one day, Patrick McDermott went on a fishing trip, and it was pretty simple. They were going to go 5 hours outside of LA and 5 hours back the next day, and hopefully come back with a cooler full of California yellowtail. That was the plan, right? But everyone returned from that fishing trip, except for Patrick McDermott. So what happened? Was there an accident? Did he go overboard? Did he try to commit suicide? Or did he try to stage his death? The answer is he tried to stage his death. So no one had seen Patrick McDermott for months after this fishing trip. So where was he, right? His ex-wife, she moved on. She actually filed an insurance claim for his death. And no one heard from him. Olivia Newton-John moved on. She got married. But no one had heard from Patrick McDermott until a private investigator started looking for him. And there had been some reports that Patrick McDermott had been seen in the Baja Peninsula in Mexico, but no one knew exactly where. So this private investigator, he kind of ran out of ideas, but he tried one last thing. He set up a website. Now, there's a couple things, if you're considering faking your death, that you shouldn't do, okay? One thing you should never do is to contact your friends, your loved ones. You can never look back, okay? If you're gonna do it, you gotta do it, okay? You can't like second guess the whole thing. And the second thing you shouldn't do is research yourself, okay? Don't Google yourself if you are trying to fake your death. And that's exactly what this private investigator did. He set up a website called something like, Where's Patrick McDermott? And he's figured that Patrick McDermott, the real guy, if he were still alive, he would search for himself. And sure enough, he started getting pings from IP addresses in Mexico. Long story short, this private investigator goes to Mexico and he finds Patrick McDermott. He's working on a ship, trying to live a new life. And Patrick McDermott did not fake his death because he was trying to file life insurance or do some sort of fraud. He just wanted to get away from it all, okay? He owed his ex-wife tons of money for back child support payments. He had a failed career in Hollywood as a gaffer. He just wanted to start over again. But faking your death is incredibly hard to get away with, okay? There are places in the Philippines where there's body farms. They can get you a body. They can get you a death certificate. But it is incredibly hard to pull off. So why am I telling you this, right? Because if faking your death is something that none of us are planning on doing, I want to convince you that maybe all of us should consider disappearing online a little bit. So we should all have some sort of incentive to disappear. And for good reasons, too. Like Mike said, my name's Javier Leiva. I'm an investigative journalist. I'm also the host of a podcast called Pretend and the PONZI Playbook. And my job is to talk to con artists, to people who are pretending to be someone else, people who don't want to be found. And I'm going to talk about some of the investigative techniques that I use to find people. And then I want you to take all that information and reverse engineer it so that you could disappear from online. digitally fake your own death, right? And now, why would somebody want to fake their own death? Or why would somebody want to disappear off of line? There's many legitimate reasons that you might want to disappear. Let's say you're a CEO of a big company and you have some disgruntled employee, and you don't want that employee to just show up at your house, right? You want your address and your privacy to be, hidden from the public. What if you are a victim of a stalker or a domestic abuse situation, and you don't want your attacker to know where you live or what part of the country you're from? That is a legitimate reason why you should disappear. Let's say you're law enforcement or a judge or a prosecutor, and one day there's, let's say you're a cop and something goes wrong and your name's all over the news. People are going to show up at your front door. By that time, it's too late to disappear. So what I'm going to talk about today is to take the kind of steps that when, let's say you win the lottery tomorrow, right? It's going to be a little too late by the time you win the lottery to disappear online. So I'm going to teach you the techniques that I use to find people so that you too could disappear, at least digitally. I've done a lot of podcast episodes about identity theft. Back in the early 2000s, the FTC reported that only about 300,000 people reported identity theft. It was a very small number. By the time 2021 rolled around, they reported that 3.1 million people have been targets of identity theft. It's a problem that goes with all the technological advancements and the internet, right? As the internet grows and more information's out there, the more people become targets of identity theft. And the guy on the right, his name is Hugh Minh Nho. He's from Vietnam. He used social engineering, which we'll talk about later, to gain access to the kind of databases that law enforcement and private investigators have, that have your date of birth, your social security number, every little piece of information that an identity thief would need to open up credit and steal your identity. Now, he's been arrested, he went to jail. I met him, actually interviewed him in Dubai, and he now teaches people the same thing that we're talking about today, how to protect your identity from people like him. And I've done all kinds of series. There's one series that you should listen to if you're interested in this topic called How to Disappear, which is kind of like the backbone of this presentation, where I interviewed a guy named Michael Basil, who's the most extreme person I've ever met when it comes to privacy. He's a digital nomad, so he has no place of residence. He moves. When he leaves his house, he has a cell phone, an iPod Touch that he only uses in his house to make phone calls, so it does not have any cell connection. And when he leaves his house, he puts his actual cell phone in a Faraday bag and travels 5 miles outside of his home, and that's when he picks up his phone so that no cell phone signal could ever triangulate it to his house. So he's a really extreme guy. He's a former FBI agent, and he's one of the guys that taught me all the things that I know. So another identity thief that I interviewed on my podcast is, well, that's me. The picture doesn't show, but the guy is in the background. His name is D'Artagnan Williams. He goes by Daw. And Daw started stealing identities since he was 15. He started with his own father. He stole his father's identity, and that turned into a business, a multi-million-dollar business, where he had field operatives. You know what field operatives meant for Daw? Those were waitresses at restaurants. Those were employees at car dealerships that would get people's private information and then sell it to Daw so that he could in turn sell it to people in the dark web. So isn't that crazy? You hand your credit card to a waitress. She goes out to cash you out, but she also maybe swipes your card in a skimmer. I mean, that stuff happens. I'm not here to scare you. I just want you to be aware of the kind of things that happen. And you don't have to go crazy like Michael Basil and live in the mountains in a cabin with without being detected. You don't have to be that extreme. You just have to make it a little bit difficult for the identity thieves to walk away, because they're looking for the low-hanging fruit. They're not looking to target any one person in particular. They're just looking for people who have exposed passwords or social security numbers that are easy to grab. And if you make it just a little bit hard for them, they'll move on to somebody else, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about next. Just the bare essential things that you should do to protect your identity. So where do we start? You got to freeze your credit. Let me see a show of hands of how many people in this room have their credit frozen. Oh, that's good. That's really, really good. If you don't have your credit frozen, it is very easy. You could do it online. You could call them. There's 3 credit bureaus, and you call them. It takes maybe 15 minutes. It does not take very long. You give them some identifiers, and you could freeze your credit. And so what that means is that if somebody has your social security number, date of birth, whatever, and they try to open credit under your name, they can't because your account is frozen. Okay, so this past weekend, I went to a car dealership to buy my daughter a car. I simply asked the guy, I said, hey, which credit bureau are you going to check my credit with? And he said, Experian. I said, give me 5 minutes. I got on the app. I unfroze my credit. It actually thaws it out for a specific period of time, 24 hours. He ran my credit. It was fine. I got my card, but then 24 hours later, my credit's frozen again. And that's just such an easy thing that you need to do to protect not only yourself, your spouse, and possibly even your children, although it is remarkably difficult to protect your children's identities. I don't know why. How many of you have been on this website? Have I been pwned? Yeah, these guys. All right, this is a very scary website, by the way. This website, when you plug in your email address, it tells you how many data breaches your email has been involved in. So like if you have a Target account and when Target got hacked, or any big company that gets hacked, what gets hacked gets dumped into the dark web. And I know the dark web sounds scary, but it's actually just a different part of the internet that has all your information, okay? And so when you apply for credit somewhere, and again, you're giving the identity thief the recipe for stealing your identity. I know my email address was in this database at least 11 times, which is kind of crazy, right? So this is another reason why you should freeze your credit, right? Because it doesn't matter how many times my information's out there. As long as my credit's frozen, nobody should gain access to my accounts. Another thing that you should do is have a password manager. And now I want to see a show of hands because I'm impressed by this crowd already. How many of you have a password manager? Passwords are a pain, aren't they? Like trying to remember passwords. I know my wife is terrible with them. My mother-in-law is terrible with passwords. But having a password manager not only is convenient because you only have to remember that one password, but it also gives you a unique password for every account. If somebody gains access to your Gmail or your email account, they could completely lock you out of your life. Could you imagine every time you try to reset a password, it goes to your email. And if they have access to that, if they lock you out of your email, you're toast. Okay, so at minimum, have a unique email address or a password for your email address, right? But I would definitely recommend the password manager. And then 2-factor authentication. That means every time you go on a website and it texts you a code, if they give you the option, do that because I know that I deal with I interview con artists, which was, I'm really questioning my career choice. I should have picked a different topic, but a lot of these con artists try to target me, and I wake up every now and then with Gmail password resets. I'm like, you know, it's kind of scary how many people are trying to target you. All right, let's see, a VPN. A VPN is always a good idea. You know, anytime you're in a public Wi-Fi, you should have a VPN. And Proton VPN is the one I use. There's a lot of options out there. But this is something that if you are going on a secure website, you should probably have a VPN. And then also, you try to shrink your online footprint. There are so many free websites out there that have all your public information. So I told you, as an investigative reporter, I'm looking through these websites to find out where you live, who you're related to, every address you've ever lived in, your email address, all this stuff. And I could build this profile of who you are. And you'd be surprised. I would search yourself in one of these public websites. And I'll tell you a little bit later how to remove yourself from these websites. All right, so I say all this, but I don't really mean to scare anybody. This is just like the reality of things that are out there. QR codes. Everybody loves QR codes, right? It seems like after the pandemic, like there's QR codes. They don't even give you menus anymore at restaurants, right? Everything's like a QR code. If you're looking for parking, if you're trying to rent a scooter, everything's a QR code, right? I was at Carolina Beach the other day. It was kind of a rainy day at the beach, but check this out. You can't hear the audio, but I made a TikTok video about it because it's crazy. A bad actor could just put a fake QR code over a real QR code, and you think you're paying for your parking, you're actually putting your credit card information in for, on a dummy website. Check this out.
You see this? This is just a sticker.
Look at that. There's a QR code in front of another QR code. So just
do in this situation.
be careful.
I don't know.
Use,
I would text the number personally, then scan
your
the
judgment
QR code,
on whether you should trust a QR code or not. I'm not saying every QR code is bad. I'm just saying, like, look how easy that could have been. Now, this next video, because you can't hear the audio, I will walk you through it. His name is James Friedman. He's from the UK. He's a professional pickpocketer, okay? This guy, he will go up to you, and he can steal your wallet, he can steal your watch, and you would never even know it. There's even a famous video where he goes up to King Charles, and he steals his watch. King Charles had no clue. I mean, it was all like, King Charles knew who he was and all that stuff. He's a great guy. But in this day and age, pickpocketing seems like something archaic, something out of bygone days, right? He now focuses his attention on digital pickpocketing, right? Like this idea that, somebody could walk by you and digitally swipe your information. It's possible in theory. It might be possible in a couple years, but there are other ways of digital pickpocketing. Let's go back to that QR code example, and I'll walk you through it. So I was on a call with him, and he told me, hey, scan this QR code.
Oh, I might be able to
I scanned it.
There we go. Oh, there it is. There it is. I got it.
All right. And then I got a web page that looked.
My website.
Oh, that was his web page. He goes, I can't believe you scanned that. Because it could have been anything. Like, why did I scan it? And he gave me no context.
Never scan a QR.
And then I clicked something on his website, and it took me to.
Now, if you go to that,
you'll see a page that looked a lot like Google.
That'll take you
You'll
out
see
to,
in just a second.
You're on Google?
Yeah, it looks like Google, but the URL is not Google. And there are ways to mask that too. So you think you are on a legit site, but it's really a hacker. And now he has complete open access to my phone. He can see everything I'm searching now. And he says, because he's an honest thief, that he will release my phone. And now he won't have my information. But these are the things that could happen with QR codes. So, yeah, things get easier for us, right? We could scan QR codes, we could do this, and that. But the easier technology gets, the easier it is for a bad actor to gain access to your information. And this whole thing that I'm talking about right now, there's a term for it. The kind of information that I use in my investigation is called OSINT. Open source intelligence. So I'm not a private investigator. I'm not law enforcement, so I don't have access to any of these paid services where I could just type in your name and get your credit history. I don't have that kind of information. So as a journalist, I'm using publicly available information to do my research, right? So I'm looking through newspaper articles, archives, libraries, images, the kind of metadata that's in images, and we'll talk about that too, but even searching the dark web for information. I mean, in the dark web, you could get access to people's passwords, usernames. I mean, there's all kinds of information that's publicly available, and there's a lot of ethical issues that come along with that. So I want to teach you some simple techniques. Some of these I might skip because they're a little bit more technical, but there's a thing called Google dorking or Google hacking. Right? So if you were going to search for yourself, let's say you or your business, you want to do some research, like how much information is out there about me, right? I could just simply type Javier Leiva in Google, and I'm going to get a lot of mixed results. I might get some people with the first name Javier. I might get some people with the last name Leiva, but I might not get Javier Leiva, right? So if I do some quotations under Javier Leiva, I'm now narrowing that search quite dramatically, actually. But I could do more with Google dorking, right? I could refine it further. I did an investigation on Frank Abagnale, the real con artist in the movie Catch Me If You Can. And it turns out that his whole life story is bogus. Like, he never pretended to be a pilot, doctor, lawyer, professor from the age of 16 to 21. So it's kind of like my claim to fame, that investigation. So if you type my name, you're probably going to get some stuff about Frank Abagnale or Catch Me If You Can. So in this search, I want to learn about Javier Leiva. I don't want to get a bunch of articles about Frank Abagnale. So what I do is I put minus Abagnale. Okay, so now it's going to remove Abagnale from all the searches. I know that Javier has a podcast. I want to remove that because I want to find out more about him as a person. And minus crime because I have a true crime podcast. And I think he lives in Apex, so I put quotation marks around there. And now you're narrowing down the search even further. I recommend you do this about yourself too. Like, plug in your name, plug in your phone number, plug in things that would identify you and see where you show up. It's a good way of trying to zap out that information. Maybe you could go in to those websites and opt out of it. There are like more refined things that you could do with Google dorking, which is like, you could search specifically with a site. So if you go on Google and you type in SIT : the URL, now your Google search is refined just to that website. Okay, it's almost like you're searching just that site, and you could do that for file types. Let's say you're looking for like a PDF or an MP3 or like anything. PDFs are good because there's a lot of misconfigured databases out there. That means databases that are not password protected, that are in Google, that might have loan applications or something like that. So, if you search for file type : PDF, it's going to return those results. And yeah, there's a lot of different tricks. These are just some of the ones that I use often. All right. So I'll give you an example of how you could combine some of these tricks, right? And this is for you to research yourself, right? So you could do like site : example.com, whatever website, file type, Excel sheet, quote, financial report, and then maybe even put your name or your company's name and see what pops up. And it's scary to know what kind of things are out there. I'll stay on this slide for a second because I saw some people taking pictures of it. All right, so then, I was talking to you about these misconfigured databases. Like in this example, this was a school district that had an open database that was Googleable, right? Like you could actually go online and search for it, and it contained instructions about their safety plans if there was like an active shooter. Like it showed where the kids were hiding, how they were going to hide, all this stuff. There's databases that contain private information, employee payroll information, and you could search these directories using some of these techniques that I was showing you. So if you're curious about yourself, these are some things that you could search. Wayback Machine is a great resource because a lot of people think that, if I delete a website, it's no longer there. Well, that's not necessarily true. The web archives, the Wayback Machine, periodically takes snapshots of web pages. So if you have sensitive data that you think, that web page is gone, you might want to check the Wayback Machine. It's almost like going back in time to see what a page looked like in a specific period. Because some people think, I said a lot of nasty things on Twitter, but don't worry, I deleted those tweets. The Wayback Machine, you could go back and pull up people's deleted tweets. So these are things that I use on my podcast for my investigations. So, if you're on social media, you haven't fully committed to disappearing, right? Because you're putting a lot of your personal information out there. And you know this, right? Like, one of the things that, at minimum, if you have like a Facebook profile or any social media profile, lock it down, make it private, There's no reason why anybody, unless you're trying to be, an influencer or something like that. If you're just like a normal person, there's no reason why anybody needs to know where you had dinner, where you're on vacation. I would definitely not post while you're on vacation, save it for afterwards. I think that's a good, be mindful of what's around you when you're posting. There's a lot of clues when you look at a picture of somebody. You could, if you're doing a video outside your house, I could see the number or there's any identifiable features. Now I could narrow it down to where you live. I mean, these are things that I'm always looking for. So yeah, lock down your social media. You'd be surprised. Because, once I start my research, I go down some really weird rabbit holes, dating websites. If you want to find out something about somebody and they turned out to be on a dating website, there's tons of information there. Genealogy sites, you could get birth records, death records, all kinds of family history. So let's say I'm looking for you, but I can't find you because you're pretty locked down, but your cousin or somebody or your sister, then now I could start working that angle. There's a lot of information there. And then a lot of people post things on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. There's a lot of information that you're putting out there about yourself that you don't realize could come back to you. There's reviews of restaurants, like on Google Maps. Oh, this person likes to frequent this Italian restaurant. Just be mindful of the information you put out there, because people like me or private investigators or a bad actor could use that to find you. Search recognition. Have you ever done a Google image reverse search? It sometimes leads to mixed results. It's not always good, but there are websites like PimEyes, P-I-M-E-Y-E, that is scary, the results. You put in a picture and it starts looking for similar pictures. It's not looking for that exact picture. It's looking for that person in different poses to try to identify you. So that's another reason why you don't want a lot of information on social media, because these sites are scraping these websites and putting information together, and that's one way to find you. And with AI, it's just going to get even better, right? You could put a picture of somebody with AI and do a reverse image search pretty soon. I mean, it's still in its early days, but it's only going to get better. So the image metadata, I talked to you about a simple text message. You just send a picture to your friend. It should be no big deal, right? My friend sent me this picture of this event that he went to, and I replied to him and I gave him his exact location, because within that text message, that photo has a lot of metadata. Not only does it tell you what kind of camera, what kind of focus, and technical details about the photo, it actually tells me where exactly, down to the specific coordinate, where that picture was taken, when that picture was taken. So you could imagine a lot of data, if a bad actor got that information, they could find out where you are. So, and this is by default on the iPhone. So you should go into your settings, and if you're concerned about this, disable these location settings. Now on social media actually strips away the metadata. So when you post a picture on social media, you cannot get this kind of data from social media, because they wipe that clean. But through text messages, or if you're airdropping it. So we talked about the people search websites, because this is one of the first places I go to when I want to find somebody, and this is something that you should do. There are so many of this. This is a game of whack-a-mole, okay? There are so many of these public databases out there, and they're free, and you could search for yourself. I've actually gone through the process of trying to fully disappear. I haven't fully done it, but you can't find me. I'll probably search here first. If I know that Javier Leiva lives in Wake County, I'm going to go on the Wake County assessor's website and look him up, and there I am. I mean, I'm still there. My address is there. Any bad actor could come and find me. Now, how do you fix this? The way to really disappear is to put your house under a trust, because now you have separated yourself from your property, okay? If you buy a car, your address is out there as public information. So what do you do in that scenario? Just put your car under an LLC. Create an LLC, like just to buy stuff like your car, your wife's car, your kid's car. So that's how you really disappear, right? When you could detach yourself from your property. I'll tell you a funny story. So Steve Jobs, when he was undergoing cancer treatment, he needed a liver transplant, but he didn't want anybody to know where he was, right? And so he went to Memphis, and he had his surgeon actually purchase the house under his name. And so now he's living under an alias on a property that has no attachment to him, and nobody knew that he was in Memphis, Tennessee getting medical treatment. Celebrities do this all the time. This is why you cannot find out how many properties Taylor Swift owns, because Taylor Swift is not buying her own properties, right? Yeah, so another way, and this is kind of interesting, how many of you have pets? A lot of you don't realize that when you take Fido to the vet for the first time, the vet turns around and gives that information to the county, okay? And this is just in case your dog bites somebody and it has rabies. They have a way of tracking down the owner. But yeah, a lot of people don't realize that their dogs are giving them away, right? So there's nothing wrong with giving the vet a fake name and address. I mean, I'm just saying. How am I doing on time, Mike? Am I good? Okay. All right, so geolocation. So I already told you how you could get data off of pictures from cell phones and stuff like that. But there are have you ever seen Jose Monkey? Yeah, he's really great. For those of you who haven't seen Jose Monkey, people send him videos all the time. Like say, hey, Jose Monkey, where am I? And they just pan the camera. And Jose Monkey just uses contextual clues to try to locate these people. And it's really fun. And he uses a website that really is a lot more sophisticated than Google. It's OpenStreetMaps, and if he sees a Taco Bell and a check cashing store, he could kind of figure out, how many Taco Bells are near check cashing stores. So that's why I tell you, for the social media, be careful of the kind of pictures you take, because like a Jose Monkey could put this stuff together and find you pretty quickly. Yeah, I was telling you about AI. I was testing some AI tools, and I posted this picture of this mural just to see if it could find out where it was, and it got pretty close. So we're getting there, guys. We're very close to it. But this stuff is really scary. So this is cell phone marketing data, and this stuff is uniquely American, by the way. Okay, everything I'm talking to you about right now, Canada doesn't have this problem, the EU doesn't have this problem because they have very strong privacy laws, but we don't. And in America, we have way too much information. But when you download apps, some of these apps are sharing your location. Okay. It could be a weather app, it could be whatever, and it's not actually sharing your cell phone number, it's sharing an anonymous ID. It's called a marketing ID, right? And it's like a string of numbers. And you're like, oh, it's anonymous, right? Well, so there was a group, and you could buy this data, okay? You could buy this data from data brokers. So you could buy a bunch of location, say, hey, I want to see how many people go into Lowe's, and they'll give you that information. So you could advertise, but that could be used by bad actors. There was a group that bought location data from really sensitive places like Planned Parenthood, and you're thinking, well, but this is anonymized information, but it's not, because if you could find out those anonymous IDs from that clinic and follow them to their homes, then it's no longer anonymous if you could stitch together the information. What about Epstein, right? Everyone wants to know where the Epstein files are, right? We don't need the Epstein files because we have a lot of marketing tracking IDs that show phones going in and out of Epstein's island. There was a Wired report that showed these marketing data, anonymous marketing data IDs. They tracked them from the island to the dock, to the airport, all the way back to places in West Palm Beach where he lived, places in New York, and it's not really that anonymous if you could start connecting the dots, right? And so this is data that we're giving away all the time. Right now, we're giving it away. I'm sure our phones are pinging off to space. There are billboards now, clear channel communication. You're just driving down the highway. You're on I-95. You pass a billboard. That billboard has a scanner that's picking up on your phone. So like the amount of information that we're giving out is really scary. So a lot of you might want to know, like, where can I learn more about this, right? I have a friend who's an ethical hacker, right? And I partner up with him a lot in my investigations. In fact, we were able to locate the location of a guy who was, it was a sextortion case where these women in Nebraska were getting harassed by some anonymous person online saying that if you don't give me your personal private photos, I will send it to your family, I will send it to your boss. And these women were being targeted, and they didn't know who this person was, and I teamed up with Michelle Khan, and we were able to actually find his IP address in Barcelona, Spain. And we handed over that information over to the Department of Homeland Security, who actually has a division on sextortion, and I never actually even released those episodes because to me it was more important catching the bad guy than it was to, publish a story, because the women, they'd been victimized enough. They didn't need a podcast episode made out of it. But Michelle Khan, he and I always team up together, and this is his book. And then I told you about the guy, Michael Basil, who is a former FBI agent who is like the most extreme person when it comes to privacy. He's the guy that leaves his house with a Faraday bag, and I don't even know if his real name is Michael Basil, but his book is excellent. It's kind of like, I keep it on my desk all the time because it talks about a lot of the same things that we talked about today, but in more depth. And The Extreme Privacy, What It Takes to Disappear is an excellent book, and he updates it all the time because these things change constantly, right? Like what we're talking about today might be relevant like in next year. And this is me, and this is my QR code. How many of you are going to actually scan it? I put it there as a joke. It actually works, and I'm not going to steal your data. But yeah, if you want to find me, my podcast is called Pretend. It's on all the podcast apps, and I talk about these kind of topics. And it's every episode is different. Sometimes they're privacy and identity theft, but sometimes they're about romance scams. Sometimes it's about stalker cases. So and the Frank Abagnale case. So yeah, I cover a lot of different topics. So if you're interested in learning more, that's the name of my podcast. If you're brave, you could scan the QR code. I promise it's safe, and you could reach me on LinkedIn or any way you like. Do we have time for questions or no? All right. Yeah, so I want to open it up to a couple questions. I hope I didn't scare everyone. Does anybody have any questions about, yeah?
When you go to a website and you sign up or whatever, that says cookies, we do cookies, is it worth going down and saying,
I always do. Yeah.
I don't want the marketing ones?
Yeah, the question was like, what do you do when you get, offered like an opportunity to decline the cookies? Yeah, decline it. But even better than that, use a safe browser. So like Firefox is a more, and DuckDuckGo, those are more privacy-oriented browsers. If you're on Chrome, it's designed to like harvest as much personal data out of you as possible, right? So, any other questions? I would freeze. The question was, when you freeze your credit, do you just freeze it with one credit bureau or do you freeze it with all of them? Just freeze all of them because you just never know. And there are more than 3 credit bureaus, but the 3 main ones is the ones that I would definitely. TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Thank you. I'm trying to.
I'm in business.
All right.
And the only one who does the business, okay? So
Okay.
I want people to know I'm not there, but I also
Right.
am conscious, anyway. I'm also conscious, like, for instance, if I post, I'm usually not posting as much personal stuff.
Right.
As I'm posting, hey, I'm going to do this for the sake
Yeah, it's tricky, and I find myself in the same boat because I want to be as private as possible, but I'm also a public person, right? And I have a podcast, and it's tricky striking that balance. But I think if you do all this stuff, you could be a public business person and kind of enjoy your privacy at the same time. And honestly, guys, I know we talked about a lot of like really extreme stuff here, but if you just freeze your credit, get a password manager, and I think you're good, right? For the most part. You made it really difficult. Those are two big barriers. Did you have a question? Well, I mean, when you freeze your credit, you're kind of, okay, so the credit card, that's a good, I don't have like a direct answer, but they do have these vanity credit cards now that they sell. So like, a credit card is useless if you don't have that 3-digit code, right? So there are credit cards that you can make custom credit cards. Like let's say you have an Amex or a Visa or whatever, and I haven't done this, but you could get a credit card that just shows the front side of the credit card, or maybe it just has the chip or whatever, right? But it doesn't show your name, it doesn't show the 3-digit ID. So like there are things that you could just do to make it harder. You could scratch off the 3-digit ID as long as you know it, right? Yeah.
You said that there were privacy laws from the U.S. here, but privacy laws that does the United States implement and enforce to protect U.S. citizens.
I mean, there's not much, honestly. Like, there's just so much that I could get. I can't imagine what they're doing that I can't already get, right? So I guess the whole, the cookie option is new. Like, people could now have an option of opting into that kind of stuff. But for the most part, like, if I want to find somebody in Canada, it is so hard. I've tried. It's just really difficult because it's not that available. Also, if you're a renter in the U.S., impossible to find, right? Like if you don't own any property, it's really, really difficult to find somebody.
I know the California, the CCPA,
Yeah.
California Consumer Protection Act, but that's state specific and it's not nearly as strong as like GDPR.
Yeah, yeah.
So in terms of email, a lot of my email automatically goes to the spam folder, but there's some that doesn't. And one of the things I do is it comes from, it'll say FedEx or might be a person's name, and it looks innocent enough, but I'll click on the name, and sometimes I get a secondary field, which also looks somewhat legit, but I'll click on it again, and it'll be unintelligible alphabet soup, followed by like .ru for Russia or Germany or some other country.
Yeah. It's crazy, right? You have to like really look at all the emails very carefully. I got an email from a class action lawsuit that said that I used to live in Eastern North Carolina, and then my information was part of a data breach, and I could join this class action lawsuit, and I was like, this can't be real. And actually, I looked it up, and it turns out that it was real, but you have to like really examine everything. If the bank is calling you, say, hey, I'll call you right back. Right? Like just always question everything. Question text messages, question everything, and just call them directly because that's a lot safer than you just clicking on a link that you don't know.
Yeah, well, I was saying, when I do similar things, but I hover and not click.
Yeah.
And so.
And it's easy to do.
Even clicking will get you to the wrong place.
And I don't care how savvy you are, sometimes you're just not on, you haven't had your cup of coffee and you're just checking your email, and I mean, you just gotta question everything, I guess. They sound really paranoid. One more. Well, if no one has any more questions, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions either during the event or offline. Just thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you listening to me.